Picture the London of today, a global metropolis of over 8 million, where the Thames is bridged by icons like Tower Bridge and the London Eye spins against a skyline of glass towers. The city buzzes with finance, tourists throng Trafalgar Square, and the riverbanks pulse with commerce and culture. Now, strip away the centuries. Rewind to the year 800 AD. That same Thames cradles a modest Saxon trading town called Lundenwic, a cluster of timber huts and muddy paths stretching along the north bank, about a mile west of the crumbling Roman walls of abandoned Londinium. No grand bridges span the river. Instead, simple wooden jetties jut into the flow, where boats from the continent unload goods, amid a population of perhaps 10,000 to 12,000 souls under Mercian rule. This is no fortified stronghold but a bustling wick, a trading settlement vulnerable yet vital, where Anglo-Saxons forged a new life from the ruins of empire. What drove this relocation from Roman stone to Saxon wood? How did its inhabitants navigate trade, faith, and emerging threats? Let's reconstruct this overlooked chapter, layer by layer, visualizing the transformation from a forgotten port to the heart of England. Urban layout and city planning as modern London's radial roads and underground lines fade into a reconstructed map of winding paths. Observe how the sprawling capital contracts into a compact riverside settlement. In 800 AD, Lundenwic's urban layout was organic and trade-oriented, centered on the north bank of the Thames in the area now occupied by Aldwych, the Strand, and Covent Garden. This location, approximately 1 mile west of the derelict Roman city of Londinium, provided direct access to the river for boating and commerce, as evidenced by archaeological excavations at sites like the Royal Opera House and Maiden Lane, where post holes and ditches reveal a settlement spanning about 60 hectares. The layout lacked the rigid grid of Roman planning, instead developing spontaneously around the main thoroughfare, the Strand, derived from the Old English strand meaning beach or shore. This east-west axis followed the natural contour of the riverbank, with side paths branching northward into low-lying gravel terraces. Jetties extended into the Thames for docking, facilitating the unloading of goods, while the settlement's southern edge hugged the water, vulnerable to floods but ideal for trade. To the north, the terrain rose gently, hosting workshops and homes, with boundaries marked by ditches rather than walls. Archaeological finds at James Street and Floral Street confirm these as drainage or property markers from the 7th to 9th centuries. No central authority imposed a master plan. Growth was driven by mercantile needs under Mercian oversight. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle notes London's importance in charters from the 8th century, such as those of King Offa r. 757-796, but the layout reflects practical adaptation: clustered buildings for artisans near the river, open spaces for markets, and peripheral areas for agriculture. Cemeteries, like the one at Covent Garden, dated to the 6th-7th centuries via radiocarbon analysis, lay outside the core, indicating expansion from earlier hamlets. Compared to today's engineered infrastructure, this layout prioritized accessibility over defense, with no enclosing fortifications mentioned in sources like Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People completed 731, which describes Lundenwic as a mart of many peoples coming by land and sea. Yet, this openness would prove precarious as Viking incursions loomed after 830. Archaeological evidence from the Museum of London, including pottery scatters, shows the settlement's peak density around 730800, setting the stage for the architecture that defined its humble skyline. Architecture and building materials visuals shift from steel skyscrapers to timber frames. Thatched roofs cluster along the Strand, smoke rising from hearths. In 800 AD, Lundenwic's architecture was predominantly wooden and utilitarian, reflecting Anglo-Saxon building traditions distinct from Roman stonework. Excavations by Archaeology Southeast at Jubilee Walk, dated 659774 via radiocarbon, and the Royal Opera House 1985 digs, reveal post-built structures with wattle and daub walls, woven hazel or willow panels daubed with clay, straw, and dung for insulation. Homes were typically single-story, rectangular halls measuring 5–10 meters long, with sunken floors or gravel bases for stability on the damp gravel soils. Roofs were thatched with reeds from the Thames marshes, supported by oak or elm timbers sourced from nearby woodlands. Internal partitions divided spaces for living, storage, and work. Hearths of clay or stone provided heat, as seen in charred remains at Bedford Street. Elite dwellings might feature larger halls, but no evidence of multi-story buildings exists for this period. Chronicles, like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, focus on later stone churches. Churches represented the few stone elements. St. Paul's Cathedral, founded in 604 under Bishop Mellitus, was likely rebuilt in wood or partial stone by 800, though direct evidence is sparse. The Victoria County History of London 1909 notes early ecclesiastical sites used recycled Roman bricks, but in Lundenwic, most construction relied on local materials: timber from Surrey forests, clay from riverbanks, and imported quernstones from the Rhineland for mills. Per trade artifacts, workshops for crafts like weaving and metalworking adjoined homes, with loom weights and slag heaps uncovered at sites like Bruce House. Streets were unpaved tracts of compacted earth, often 2–3 meters wide, rutted by carts and prone to mud. Ditches drained rainwater into the Thames. No aqueducts or sewers survived from Roman times. Waste pits, like those at Lyceum Theatre, handled refuse. This architecture contrasted sharply with modern London's durable concrete and glass, embodying transience. Buildings were rebuilt frequently due to fire or rot, as inferred from stratigraphic layers and excavations. Yet, it suited a trading community, where functionality trumped permanence, mirroring the social divisions within. Population size and social classes animate the paths with figures, a sparse crowd compared to today's underground rush. Around 800 AD, Lundenwic's population is estimated at 10,000 to 12,000, based on settlement extent and density models from historians like Rory Naismith in Citadel of the Saxons 2019. This figure represents growth from 7th century origins, supported by trade, but pales against Roman Londinium's 30,000 peak. Social classes followed Anglo-Saxon hierarchies under Mercian rule. At the top were kings and ealdormen. Coenwulf of Mercia r. 796–821 controlled London post office, with local governance via reeves. Nobles, or thanes, owned lands and traded, living in larger halls with retainers. Charters from the period, preserved in the Cartulary of Worcester, mention grants to Mercian elites. Clergy formed an influential class. Bishops like those at St. Paul's oversaw spiritual affairs, with monasteries emerging. Merchants and artisans, perhaps 20–30, drove the economy, including Frisia farmers, traders, and foreign émigrés from Frisia or the Rhineland. Per imported pottery finds, the majority, 60–70, were laborers, craftsmen, and bondsmen, smiths, weavers, potters in workshops, fishermen along the Thames. Women managed households, with roles in textile production. Children labored early. Slaves, theoists, often were captives, performed menial tasks, though numbers were modest per legal codes like Inney's laws. C. 694. Skeletal analyses from Covent Garden Cemetery show average heights of 1.7 meter for men, 1.6 meter for women, with diets of grain and fish. Class-dictated housing, elites in spacious halls, commoners in cramped huts. Unlike modern London's diverse middle class, status was hereditary, enforced by Wergild values and law codes, influencing daily occupations. Daily life and occupations. Street scenes come alive. Vendors at markets, smiths hammering, families in huts. Daily life in 800 AD centered on trade and subsistence, as described by Bede as a vibrant mart. Sunrise brought activity. Farmers from nearby hamlets like Paddington tilled fields for wheat, barley, and vegetables, per pollen evidence from excavations. Occupations were river-focused. Merchants bartered at wharves, dealing in wool, hides, and slaves. Artisans crafted in homes loomweights at Maiden Lane indicate we've earned slag at Bedfordbury shows smithing. Fishermen netted eel and salmon in the Thames, supplementing diets. Women baked bread in clay ovens, spun wool. Men repaired boats or traded. Meals: porridge or bread with cheese for breakfast, stew of beans, pork, or fish midday in evenings. Water from wells or the river, often boiled. Homes lit by rushlights, warmed by hearths. Evenings involved storytelling or Christian prayers. Dangers: floods, fires. Stratigraphy shows burn layers. Diseases like tuberculosis from cemetery bones. Life expectancy, 30 to 40 years, per osteology at St. Brides. Community bonds. Markets fostered interactions. Festivals honored saints. This routine contrasts modern office life. Then, survival intertwined with commerce. Paving for economic activities. Trade and economic activity. Markets bustle. Boats unload pottery. Coins change hands. Trade defined Lundenwic, per Bede's 731 account. Economy was mercantile agrarian. Local goods like wool exported to Frisia. Imports included Rhenish lava querns, Frankish glass from sites like Bruce House. Coins: Offa's gold Mancus c. 775796, inscribed De Vico Londonii, minted in London. Silver ciatas circulated per hordes. Markets along the Strand. Tolls funded kings. Economic shifts. Mercian dominance boosted stability post 730, but Viking raids from 842 disrupted. Unlike London's finance, trade sustained growth, underpinning politics. Political control and power structures. Halls host assemblies. Kings issue charters. In 800 AD, under Conwulf of Mercia, London was a key asset, per charters granting lands. Power: feudal, with kings overlords. Reeves collected dues. Disputes post Offa involved Wessex. Consequences: stability fostered trade, but centralization foreshadowed Viking vulnerabilities. This intertwined with religion. Religious influence. Churches ring bells. Congregations gather. By 800 AD, Christianity dominated. St. Paul's central since 604. Monks copied texts. Bishops like Hethebert d. 802 advised kings. Tithes supported churches. Influence: unified society, per Bede. Unlike secular London, faith shaped norms. Cultural norms: families share meals. Old English spoken. Culture: Anglo-Saxon, with pagan remnants Christianized. Education: clerical. Art: brooches from graves. Norms: honor, kinship. Gender roles per laws. Methods of defense or warfare. Paths lack walls. Militias assemble. No fortifications. Defense via furred levies. Warfare against rivals. Pre-Viking. Transformation and lessons blend to modern. Lundenwic abandoned post-842 raids. Refounded as Londonburg 886 by Alfred. Developments: Norman conquest, 1066 built tower. Trade revival. Perspective: London's resilience from Saxon roots.